Hello, everybody, and call me Ishmael. Ha 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 ha. I made a joke again. Um, and we're going to be talking today about what makes a classic a classic, who the hell decides what's a classic, and toward the end of the video, we're going to go over five classics you probably haven't heard of because they are from a different country other than the United States. Gasp, there's other countries? Yes, there are. There are many, in fact. Um, So yeah, let's just splash on down. Ha ha ha. Moby Dick joke to the screen share. And we're swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. All right. So our leading question is what makes a classic novel a classic? So, a classic novel earns its status by exploring universal themes with exceptional artistic quality and enduring cultural relevance that allows it to speak to new readers across generations. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So, it could survive more than a generation. To me, a generation, because we name our generations now, is about 15 years. So, at least 30 years for multi generational. So, if it's talked about between a mom and a dad and a child, and then the child also reads and loves and adores it as they age, that's two generations worth right there. Now, if grandpa and grandma, mom and dad, and son and child, there's more credibility because it's now lasted three generations because they all love and adore this book. Could they, in fact, read it all on the same day? Yes. And my mind just exploded at that thought. Anyway, multi generational survival. Though no single fixed criteria exists, a consensus of readers, academics, and literary critics over time determines a work's classic standing. While I'm not an academic or a literary critic, debatable since I'm on YouTube now, but I am a reader, so consensus of readers. Um, I've never been invited into the woods every 23rd year on the 23rd spring, dressed in a robe with some cloaks and daggers in a round table of books and waiting for the moon to shine on the correct book and be like, haha, classic. Never done that. Maybe it refers to ratings? I don't know. I guess we'll have to go on down to figure it out, but I feel jaded if I've never been invited to the secret council, and I'm sad now. But I digress. Enduring relevance. Universal themes. Classics explore fundamental aspects of the human condition, such as love, death, morality, and ambition. This focus of universal truths allow the novels to remain timeless, transcending their original historical and cultural context. Um, Love is eternal. That's a quote. Everybody dies. That's a quote. The morality question. Everybody goes over that. And to some extent, most people have an ambition of some kind. I guess that's a good metric or theme, as all four kind of apply to everyone for the most part. This last line here, transcending the original historical and cultural context. Yeah, so what can survive again over a long period of time that's a universal theme? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's in the 1800s, 1600s, minus 800 BC, or in the year 2025. Everybody experiences at least those four things. So, fair. Stands the test of time. A work must demonstrate staying power, remaining popular and relevant for decades, if not centuries, after its initial publication. In the essay, Why Read the Classics? Author, oh no, names in different non American versions. Italio Calvino suggested that the classic book is a book that has never finished saying what it has to say. That's that's profound and interesting. So a work that we're reading makes us think long past we're done reading it, reevaluating what was transpired in said novel. And we go back and reference and reevaluate these questions again and again and again. We may never come to a conclusion on them, So something more or less that's thought-provoking. Um, okay, I could buy that. Rewards multiple readings. The richness and depth of a classic novel offer new insights with each rereading. For example, a reader may identify with a different character or gain a more nuanced understanding of a complex theme as they mature. Ha! I don't like to reread books normally, but to their point of getting a more vast understanding by rereading, I'm on board with that statement. And maybe I should reread more books than I do, but I like new experiences more, I guess, as far as my readership goes. But if I had more time and I didn't have a lifespan, I'd be up for rereading more, I suppose. But their point and argument, or just fact that they're claiming, um, yeah, I can get behind that technically. Each rereading. But man, that's a lot of commitment, especially if it's a long book. Like, I mean, my background's Moby Dick, and that's not for the faint of heart. That's a hard book, a long book, and yeah. So moving along, I guess. Artistic and cultural significance. Exceptional artistic quality. A classic is notable for its masterful literary craftsmanship, including the quality of its prose, innovative narrative techniques, and skilled character development. Yeah, I mean, I want all those things in my book, but some books I love may not check all three of these boxes here, or four boxes. Um, but it's still great, and I would consider them a classic. Innovative narrative techniques. That's a harder one. Like, what makes their style different? Maybe writing in, like, I don't know, the second or third person. I guess that's innovative. Um, or telling it from the dead person side of you. I guess that's innovative. But these things I mentioned have been done before. So creating new innovation after I don't know how long, multiple centuries or millennia of books, that's a hard task of reinvent the wheel. But fair enough, not my problem. It's my problem to read them, right? So, memorable characters and settings. These novels often feature multi-dimensional characters whose struggles and development feel authentic and relatable. Likewise, the settings are often so vivid that they become synonymous with the era they represent, such as Victorian London in a Dickens novel. Um, yeah, but I mean, like Baker Street with Sherlock Holmes would probably be another good example of that. Tatooine and Star Wars. And there's others, but some books I don't know if there's a defining setting that I could place, but memorable works like I'm quoting like I remembered them, right? And like most of the reference I mentioned everybody knows. So I guess that's what makes a classic is a known reference that just becomes in culture. Interesting. Oh, maybe I just read the next bullet point without scrolling. The cultural and historical impact. A classic either reflects the social and political atmosphere of its time, or in some cases influences it. Novels like Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1984 have had an immense cultural impact, shaping the conversation around major social and political issues. Social and political issues are usually a hot topic, and there's a lot of debate, but I get their point of that would cause conversation once the book's released, especially if it's in the now versus something in the past. Like if something's going on politically right now, like let's I'm not trying to turn this a political bait, but for the sake of example, immigration, us deporting people. If a book were to come out today about that topic, I bet you it would go viral on social media, regardless of the work being fantastic or it was an okay reading experience, just examining the artwork outside of the real life application. But if I wrote something about the JFK assassination, because that's not happening now, that was many years ago, would it have the same buzz? buzzworthiness? Would it get people talking? Because when people talk, people read it or read more about it or of it. So it becomes more householdy at that stage. So this one's an interesting one, but I kind of agree with its point. Influences other works. Many classics act as a touchstone that inspire later generations of writers who emulate their style or build on their themes. Classic characters and stories are also often retold and adapted in other media such as film and theater. Halfway, 75% agreeing with this one. I mean, I look at something like Lord of the Rings, very much considered classic fantasy and the benchmark of what fantasy should be. But surprise, surprise, there were other fantasy books written before it. Though I think we can point directly to this work of Lord of the Rings as probably the definitive one people recognize, and it's considered a classic. And there were media adaptations of it. That's not to say that every adaptation that comes out beyond the book, whether it's film, radio, television, Broadway play, is any good. Because I've seen a lot of media tie-in material. It's not great. The book was way better. But then again, I have to separate the two art forms of this is a their inspiration. Kind of like when we were talking about different translators, it's their take on the work, and plus they got to pack it in, I don't know, 2 hours or less, most of the time less, versus something that took me 12 hours to read and think on and enjoy. So I see their point, but not all the time, I would say. The changing nature of the classic. The definition of a classic is not static and has evolved over time. Evolving standards. The traditional canon was historically dominated by the work of white men. However, ongoing reevaluation by literary scholars is leading to greater recognition of works by women, people of color, and authors from non-Western traditions, expanding what is considered a classic. I'm afraid to even poke the bear on this one, but let's do it. Let's do it, right? That's what you're here for. Yeah, not wrong. Um, Now, that's not to say every book written by a white man is bad or garbage or shouldn't be considered for a classic or reevaluated of let's remove its classical status. I think we're beyond that point. But looking at works that were maybe ignored because they were a person not of their creed, religion, social, sexual orientation, or gender. Um, yeah, I guess because no, it should be done. All work should be examined and considered of its classical status. I don't think we should go back and reevaluate what's already considered a classic. And I think the biggest one, and they're all punchy, hot topics, watch what you say, Johnny topics, but non-Western traditions. So speaking as a person born and raised in America, we tend to stick to just American works. Um, there are plenty, tons of non-American classics out there from other cultures. They just may not have made it to our borders either because there wasn't an English translation available. I don't speak words beyond English. Um, should I learn every language in the world? No. I'll wait for my English copy to arrive, which may or may not be great because, again, the translation may matter. Like the Italian version is great in Italian, but the American English version is garbage. The translator did a piss poor job. And to me, say I didn't like it is blasphemous, right? To a person in Italian who, well, what are you talking about, Johnny? You're stupid. Now I read your Moby Dick book over here in Italian, and guess what? Moby Dick sucks. It's the same deal. If they got one of our works, they would look and examine it from their perspective, and if the translator dropped the ball, I mean, what can you say? It's just not going to go over. So, universal classic, I guess, is a term I'm going to coin versus an American classic on that one, or a Western classic. Um, Were things not as talked about outside of like a person of color? Absolutely. Whether African American, Native American, all the other Americans, they're all Americans, right? So, works by women. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely points where women would use male pen names just so they would get the male audience to read it. And we've seen the reverse of this as well, where male writers will use a female name, usually to go to more gender biased genre like romance, just to sell more because reading a romance by a male author, though more commonly accepted today, there's a point in time where that wasn't good, or you weren't going to sell very many copies. Um, let's see, revaluation by literary scholars. Literary scholars, that term bugs me a little bit because they are, I guess that's a job. They're doing scholarly work, examining literature. But anyway, let's go on down. I spent a long time on this involving standards one, but for the greater good, right? Personal interpretation. Ultimately, as Italio Calvino suggested, the selections of classic is a personal process. Readers define themselves in relation to these words either by embracing them or challenging them. I like this one. I kind of agree with it. Mostly agree with it. Um, so it's with us, right? We decide what's a classical work. Now, is the reason it didn't become a classic because I didn't talk about it enough to other fellow readers? I didn't get them to read it or force reading upon them. That's always fun to do, right? Um, and then I don't know, some viral post, it hits the chain of passing it forward. They got the recommendation through my starting of the recommendation, right? That's how it all works. Starts with one reader to the viral person, whether that's a news outlet or something else. All right, going on down. So, point number two, who decides what a classic novel is? No single person or group decides what a classic novel is. So there goes my get invited to the secret woods in robes and daggers and moonlight and table of books. No, a stone altar of books. I like this better idea, but they're telling me it's not done. I don't know if I believe them. You believe them? Let me know in the comments. Instead, his status emerges from a long-term consensus shaped by readers, academics, critics, and the public. What do you mean the public? Are they not readers? Well, okay. For a book to become a classic, it must demonstrate an enduring influence and appeal across generations. Okay, I mean, readers, academics, critics, and the public. I guess the public. The collective influence of readers. The most critical factor in a book becoming a classic is whether people continue to read it long after its publication. Yes, I agree with that. It should be talked about for hundreds, 200s, 300 years. Is this next bullet point the test of time? A work must maintain popularity and relevance with a wide audience for decades or even centuries. While experts and critics contribute to a book's prestige, if it is not read by the public, it will likely fade into obscurity outside of academic circles. Okay. Now, let's look at something like William Shakespeare. All of his works, quote unquote, classics, right? I don't necessarily like to read Mr. William Shakespeare. And there's been so many adaptations, modernizations, reinterpretations of his work. Now, because of that, I do know his name. I kind of have a general idea on his work because either I've been exposed to it, not necessarily through books, film and television, plays, discussionary, forced upon topics in school, um, to cause a centralized point of discussion, re-examination of what are they talking about here. But looking at one of the earlier points we were talking about of themes of love, tragedy, that is something we all can relate to, right? So William Shakespeare's work is in essence, relatable. It came out centuries ago, and yet I find I'm not doesn't have that appeal to me personally, but I understand who it appeals to. Um, Probably literary scholars, as they kept saying. Um, it's just not the kind of book I like to pick up. Unless maybe it's for group discussionary sake, then yeah, like for a book club or something. While experts and critics contribute to a book's prestige. Yeah, this goes to more to talking about a book, keeping it alive, keeping it flowing, smart people talking smartly about things they like. We we mere peasants or laymen's hear this and we're like, I want to be smartsies too. And maybe we'll pick this up and through osmosis by reading the same book, we are now smartsies together. Yay. Going on down. Cultural memory. The book is so impactful that its characters, story, and quotes become embedded in the collective cultural consciousness. It has a stronger chance of becoming a classic. This often happens with titles that receive multiple film adaptations or are frequently referred in other media. Again, I'll point to Lord of the Rings. I mean, we've talked about Harry Potter, though it's not very old in comparison to Lord of the Rings. I think the same kind of impactful cultural memory has occurred in both formats, both book and movies. Um, then if I look at something like Gladiator, I don't think people are going to remember Gladiator the book because I've read that thing. It ain't great, ladies and gentlemen. The movie, the Russell Crowe one, really good. Now, will the film survive the test of time? Maybe, debatably so. Um, I don't hear people talking about the book too much. So let's see. Characters and story and quotes. Yeah, if something's quotable, like I gave one at the beginning of this, the Ishmael quote, call me Ishmael. And that's quotable, right? That's a memorable quote from the book. It's the opening line of the book, three little words. Um, yeah, or Hobbit in the hole in the ground. There's you're a wizard, Harry. These are things we say out loud. So again, talking, the audible version of talking, not the typing version of talking. Well, I'm not going to say that. I think the typing version of talking is okay, as long as there's quotable, right? People are saying things. We got GIFs and we got memes of people's quotes now, too. So it comes embedded because of those memories, those haha moments, or those, oh, thought provoking moments. You said a quote. Um, Going on down. The role of academia and criticism. Oh, this is I'm not the biggest fan of biased opinion, even though I have my own biased opinion. But when somebody forcibly tells me that I should do something because they're smart, I squint and challenge it. I guess it's the anarchist in me. Anyway, academics, critics, and educators play a significant role in formalizing a book's classic status by influencing the literary canon, which is the body of work considered most important and influential. Again, I don't like it when people tell me I must read this because it is the most important thing ever, and if you don't read it, you're a silly man. No, I'm not. I just like different things. And what's my literary canon is mine, and what's yours is yours, and maybe the two overlap from time to time. Thank you, sir or madam. Gatekeepers. Haha. Gatekeepers of the canon. Editors, publishers, professors, and librarians. See, I told you those librarians were up to no good. Can promote a book's prestige by including it in textbooks, university syllabi, and curated book list. The more a text is studied and taught, the more its canonicity is reinforced. That is a word. Canonicity. Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, smartsy people. We want to be smart too. A professor is a smartsy. A librarian is a smartsy. I don't know about publishers. I've worked in there, but for lack of argument, smartsy, editor, smartsy. So we tend to want to believe them, But I'm going to tell you, take pause. Now, maybe it'll cause you to take a second look you passed on before because of their suggestion. Um, but I do agree if you are force reading people, which is school or academia, more or less, you're going to have read it. Thus, more people will know of it because it's not really getting a book recommendation that you could pass or read. This is telling you you're taking this course, you must read this book. It is the class assignment. So, assuming you actually read the class assignment book, you'll have more in common with people because you got a new year of students year after year. And the longer that book stays in that syllabi or library program, or reprinted by a publisher, or talked about in an academic class setting, the more people who know about it or in the know of the work, of course, they're going to have more in common to talk about. So, I do agree. I mean, they use the right word, gatekeeping, because there's plenty of other books never mentioned in these settings for probably bad, in my opinion, but I'm not gonna get too much into that more than I already have. I've been really squinty today with today's topic, but yeah. Um, yeah, there's stuff that just doesn't get in, and the stuff that's taught, I do agree that it influences the canon of most talked about books. Absolutely. Doesn't mean those books are any good, but common language, people like talking about similar things. Interpreters and shapers of opinion. Influential critics and scholars like the literary critic Harold Bloom shaped the conversation around the literary greatness and helped build a work's reputation. In his book, The Western Canon, that's a decent title, at least you're being honest with it, Bloom argued for the centrality of certain authors influencing academic thought for decades. So yeah, this one man, it gave status of he knows what he's talking about, influenced generational reading for decades. That's what happens. Do you go outside of that? I don't know because there's so much time to read, right? And who do you trust? Your small, close circle of reading friends that read similar to you, or this high prestigious guy, or you met somebody in the bookstore and they said, "Hey, I noticed you're looking at that. You'll probably like this, that, or the other." Or your librarian, the trustworthy one, not the untrustworthy librarian. Um, their recommendation because they're looking at what you're checking out and they're like, "Oh, I see you like this. I read these. I think you would like them too. They're similar but different." And it's like, well, maybe you gotta try it out and make your own informed decision. But generally, just read what you like to read and don't feel obligated to experiment for the sake of experimenting. If you want to broaden your scope of reading, and I encourage this if it's your choice to do so, go for it. Constant reevaluation. The canon is not static, and it is continually being challenged and revised, particularly by movements seeking to include historically marginalized voices from women and people of color. This means that once forgotten works can be rediscovered and reevaluated by scholars earning classical status long after their initial release. Yeah, I mean, if they didn't even consider the work to be like taught in their school or carried in the library, either for a gender thing or a racial thing, because of skin color, yeah, reevaluate, re-examine the work. Maybe you want to include that into your syllabi. Um, but in today's times, I think it's a little, well, I can't say that. I can't because there's always censorship of some kind going on, right? We're just going to scroll down. Oh, man. The dynamic process of canonization. The process of a book becoming classic is best understood as a dynamic, ongoing negotiation among all these groups. Okay. The test of time is fundamental filter, but the interpretations and endorsements from influential figures and institutions solidify a classic's legacy. I agree with this. Force reading. More people can talk about something that your grandpa read because they also had to read it in high school. You all went to the same high school, including your dad or mom. Ultimately, the title of classic is a social construct. It is not inherent quality of a book, but rather a status that a community of readers and scholars bestows upon it over time. So, bestows upon it. There's no awards ceremony as far as I'm aware of, unless there is a secret council that meets every 23rd spring of every 23rd year in the woods. I hope there is, and I want to be invited. As Italio Calvino wrote in his book, Why Read the Classic? A classic is, quote, a book that has never finished saying what it has to say, end quote. Okay? And they go on to say the ongoing process of reading, rereading, and debating a text is what keeps it alive and relevant for new generations. Yes, on that last point. A book that has never finished saying what it has to say. Huh. It's interesting to think about. So even that question in itself has caused me to ponder and reponder what I pondered upon previous ponderings. I mean, sometimes a book just ends, right? It has a beginning, middle, and end. It's a great work. Do I need to re-examine that fact? Maybe if there was something impactful going on, but if it's very simple, but very simple done extraordinarily well, I don't think I do. So, but other works I could see where I would agree with that statement. But for him, on his version of what a classic means, I could see the point, and that's his choice. Going down. We are done. So lots to unpack there. You may need to rewind, rewatch, haha, reread, rewatch, ha ha ha. But we are going to go on to some recommendations out of Western culture that you may or may not have heard of that are considered classics, at least classics in their country, but they do have English translations. So, and I'll warn you, they're quite beefy books. Like this first one from India. Uh, Again, I apologize for my probable mispronunciation. The Mahabharata 10-volume box set. Yeah, that's a lot. Coming in at a mere 5,933 total pages. But again, it's 10 volumes, right? It's not meant to be read, maybe not even within a year for most English speaker readers. We got Penguin, the publisher, and I think this is the translation author. They don't have the actual author or sets of authors. Bibek, Debroy, and as the translator, TR there. Okay. Goodreads is giving it a 4.5. Amazon Readers giving it a 4.7. But this is multitudes, epic stories of a gigantic Indian odyssey of things. It's on my list of things to be read. I haven't read it myself, but I've heard numerous people that have read it that they have enjoyed it. And these people I trust, and yeah, there are shorter versions or abridged versions of this book, but for $70 to get almost 6,000 pages of reading material, can't really go wrong with that. And that's again, that's if you choose to buy from Amazon. I just pulled this up for cover art's sake to show the book off a little bit because it's neat. I'm in the way. Thanks, Zoom. But yeah, it's a neat little set here. Got little things going on. Yeah, here's it stacked up and down vertically. That is a tome. That is a tome. Going on. We have the Four Rains from Silkworm Books as the publisher, coming in at 663 pages. And this is from Kukrit Pramoj. And this is a book from Thailand. And I believe it is based from World War II. It is. But basically, it's about four reigns. I mean, it's the title of the book, right? So, who's leading the country over the course of these four lifetimes, quote unquote lifetimes? Um, Looks like an interesting read, and they have the English version by Tula Chandra there. So, yeah, That's the book. Excuse me. And from China, I do believe we have. Oh, again, this is a multi-volume set. It's 5 volumes. Again, from Penguin Random House for this version. Starts off with the story of the stone. It's also called The Dream of the Red Chamber is another one, and it's about manners. I mean, I'm kind of intrigued just off that, but 5 volumes of it, man. Um, then we have volume two, volume three, four, and five. And how much is the first one? Just give us an idea. Going over here, loading. 21 bucks. So the 5 volume set will cost you 80 bucks. It's not bad for 5 books, brand new books, mind you. And I forgot to mention Four Range is going for about 30 in paperback, 10 bucks at Kindle. But if you can find it outside of Amazon, please do so. Only showing Amazon listings for picture's sake. Need better photos. Places outside of Amazon. Anyway, um, this one is a Filipino classic. Noli me Tangere. And Shap's Library of Translation paperback by Jose P. Rizal. And then we got the editor, and we got the translator of, oh man, your name's harder than the authors. Soledad Laxon Lokson. Cool. Got a 4.2 over in Goodreads, a 4.6 on Amazon. Take that with a grain of salt. Interestingly enough, printed by University of Hawaii Press. I actually put some eBay listings of that university up the other day. Coming in at 472 pages. And our last one is from Egypt. It is called The Egyptian, a novel, rediscovered classic. So this is a fun little thing. I mean, it's kind of on brand or on topic rather of what we were talking about. First published in the United States in 1949, a widely condemned as obscene. The Egyptian outsold every other novel published that year and remains a classic. Readers worldwide have testified to its life-changing power. It is full-blooded recreation of a largely forgotten era in the world's history. The Egypt of the 14th century BCE. Pharaohs and gods contended with a near collapse of history's greatest empire. This epic tale encompasses the whole of the then known world, from Babylon to Crete, from Thebes to Jerusalem, while centering around one unforgettable figure. A man of mysterious origin who rises from the depths of degradation to become a personal physician to the pharaoh. Cool. 60 bucks, coming in at 512 pages from the Chicago Review Press. Author is Mika Waltari. Translation or translator from Naomi Walford. 4.2 on Goodreads, 4.5 on Amazon. Yeah, 55 bucks. If you want the hardcover, we're running close to 100, at least in Amazon land. Again, if you can buy from your local bookshop, always the best place. If not, well, try some other book-focused websites that are not Amazon. And yeah, so let's stop the screen share here. So, what is my opinion on what a classical work is? Um, Great question that I did not prepare for in advance. Maybe I should have, now that I've asked it out loud and into the recording box. See that? That was a stall tactic, me drinking coffee, because I couldn't talk and drink coffee at the same time. So, I agree with the multi-generational facet. I think people talking about books. Um, I look at a work that I deem a classic as something I've read before, and I'm like, this is the best of what it's trying to say at the time. And then maybe that work gets replaced by another book who does it better down the road. Because I tend to read similar things. And to re-examining classics to what we were talking about, that's kind of my bitch point for re-examination of works, is books that I've actually read. because that's my point of reference. I think every literary reader needs a point of reference to go off of versus taking lock, stock, and barrel of somebody's opinion. Now, I think opinions can give me an extra consideration of things I might double check that I passed before or just wasn't interested at the time because of age and interest, because we evolve as we age, right? And um maybe a Pulitzer Prize winner or a Nobel winner, though, as we know, awards or any kind of lists like the New York Times, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, etc., they're going to have their own little sets of bias. Now, whether I agree with said bias is going to be book to book dependent. It's not going to be, I take the whole thing as, well, they're right 100% of the time, all the time. No, that's not true. Um, Other things that, excuse me, that I consider a classic, I guess it come from the academic setting, like Ulysses or your Moby Dick or Of Mice and Men or Charlotte's Web or Alice in Wonderland. Not all of those I may like, but do I consider them a classic work? Probably because I it's been so ingrained again, the engrossing of culture, thrown at me so many times, heard at least the name so many times that who am I to disagree with something I haven't read? I mean, I've read some of those to be fair, but let's just say I hadn't. Who am I to disagree? Is it a classic by the world at large, or at least my hemisphere at large, or country at large? That's another thing. International classic versus country classics, right? Or your country's classic. So, at the end of the day, you need to make the right choice on what the term really means to you. Those are just some examples of mine of what a classical work means to me. And then we went over what the, well, internet, aka the world, most of the world probably, thinks of what a classic is. The reevaluation as far as cultural or gender biased or different being a different skin color, sexual orientation, or just from a different place outside of the Americas. Yes, I think we should reevaluate those works if they've never even been considered. If they've been considered or dismissed because of people not liking a person for being different, yeah, we should take another look at those and decide as a culture versus immediately dismissing it. But I do think there are a lot of things that get passed under the table that just aren't talked about that don't even have the chance to become a classic because they may have only sold 100 copies, but it may be the greatest 100 copies out there. But the readers, which is you and I, didn't do our job, didn't do the book recommendation, didn't do the YouTube, Twitter, Instagram post about it, didn't go to my librarian and recommend it for a reading or a book club focusing on that book. We got to do our part too, or else these great things don't really go to greatness. So it's up to us at the end of the day. Excuse me. And I hope to foster some of that in my book club I'll be starting. Link for that is down in the Patreon, down in the description below. And I'll link the 5 books you should maybe consider taking a look at that are international outside the US classics. Um, but yeah, that's one of the points I want to talk about in my book club is I want us to go after we read a work to rate the work so we can impact culture ourselves. Because like it or not, ratings do matter to a certain set of readers. They may just pass a book up because it got a 3.4 star instead of a 3.5 star, and that's their cutoff of what they will read because there's so many books. There's so many. We got to decide. Not talking about impulse buys, just online shopping, trying to get a book recommendation to put on my list of I need to buy this. So we got to do our part two as readers. Now, I don't expect academic land or critic land to change anything there. That is what it's going to be, and that's outside of our control. But what is in our control is making people aware of what's a good thing. Now, I'll preface that what's a good thing to me may not be a good thing for them, but I could recommend it in that context. Like, I love this book. I don't know if you will or not, but it's about this, that, and the other. If that's your jam, I would give it a look. So, yeah, um, I think that's going to do it for today. Again, book club Patreon link below. I'm going to leave video or not videos, haha, links for the book recommendations and keep on booking on.